The rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the warped wooden roof of the old house on Maple Street. Eleanor Grayson stood at the kitchen window, her reflection ghostly in the glass, her graying hair pulled into a loose bun. At 50, she felt the weight of time in her bones, but it was the weight of absence that pressed harder. 2 weeks ago, her husband of 25 years, Thomas, had vanished. No note, no call, no trace, just a half-empty closet, a missing suitcase, and a bank account stripped bare. The man she'd loved, fought with, and built a life alongside had walked out without a word, leaving her in a house too big for one, with bills piling up like autumn leaves. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the chipped porcelain mug in her hand, the tea long gone cold. She wasn't a woman prone to tears. Years of raising 2 children, managing a household and supporting Thomas's erratic career as a freelance architect had toughened her. But tonight, the loneliness was a living thing, curling around her heart. The radio played softly in the background, some old jazz tune Thomas used to hum, and it stung like a fresh cut. Where was he? Why had he left? The questions gnawed at her, but there were no answers. Only the echo of his last words to her. "I'm going out for a bit." Don't wait up. She hadn't waited up that night, assuming he'd be back from whatever errand or late meeting he'd gone to. But morning came, and then another and another, until the silence grew deafening. The neighbors whispered, their pitying glances sharp as needles. Her daughter Lily called daily from college, her voice tight with worry. Her son Michael, who lived across the country, urged her to hire a private investigator, but Eleanor couldn't afford one. The bank account, once a modest cushion, was nearly empty. Thomas had withdrawn everything but a few $100s. She called his phone until it went straight to voicemail, contacted his colleagues who claimed they hadn't seen him in months, and even filed a police report. The officer had been kind but blunt. "People leave, ma'am. It happens. We'll do what we can, but without evidence of foul play." He trailed off, leaving her to fill in the blanks. Eleanor turned from the window, her eyes catching on the small wooden box on the kitchen table. It was Thomas's, one of the few things he'd left behind. Intricate carvings of vines and flowers adorned its surface, a relic from his college days when he dabbled in woodworking. She'd never seen him open it, not in all their years together. He'd always said it held old junk, nothing special. But tonight, with the rain and the jazz and the ache in her chest, that box seemed to call to her, a whisper of something hidden, something she'd missed. She sat down, her hands trembling as she lifted the lid. Inside was a jumble of papers, faded photographs, and a small leather-bound notebook. The photos were of them, younger, happier, laughing at a beach, cutting their wedding cake, holding newborn Lily. Tears pricked her eyes, but she pushed them back, focusing on the notebook. Its pages were filled with Thomas's cramped handwriting, dates and numbers, cryptic notes like, "Meeting with R, 3 p.m., don't tell E, and deposit confirmed offshore." Her heart stuttered. Offshore. Thomas had never mentioned anything about offshore accounts. He'd always complained about their finances, about how his freelance work barely kept them afloat. Was this a clue to where he'd gone, or why? The final page held a single sentence, underlined twice. "If I disappear, check the attic." Her breath caught. The attic? They rarely went up there. Too many cobwebs, too many memories packed away in boxes. But the words felt like a message, a breadcrumb left for her to follow. She closed the notebook, her mind racing. Was this a game, a confession, or something darker? The rain pounded harder, and the jazz on the radio faded to static. Eleanor stood, the wooden box clutched to her chest, and made her way to the attic stairs. Each creak of the floorboards felt like a heartbeat, pulling her toward a truth she wasn't sure she wanted to face. The attic smelled of dust and time, the air thick with the ghosts of their past. She flicked on the single bulb, its weak light casting shadows across stacks of boxes, old furniture, and forgotten dreams. In the corner, half hidden under a tarp, was a metal filing cabinet she didn't recognize. It was locked, but the key was taped to the underside, as if Thomas had wanted her to find it. Her hands shook as she turned the key, the click loud in the silence. Inside were folders, dozens of them, labeled with dates and initials she didn't understand. One caught her eye. Eleanor's future. Her pulse quickened. She opened it, expecting letters or photos, but instead found a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I had to protect you. If you're reading this, it's already too late." Her knees buckled and she sank to the floor, the note trembling in her hands. Protect her? From what? The man she'd loved had left her with nothing but questions, and now in the dim attic light, she felt the weight of a secret she was only beginning to unravel. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and somewhere below, the radio crackled back to life, playing a song she didn't recognize. Eleanor clutched the note, her heart pounding with fear and determination. Whatever Thomas had hidden, she would find it. Whatever he'd done, she would survive it. Eleanor sat on the attic floor, the note in her hand crumpling slightly under her tightening grip. The words, "I'm sorry, Ellie. I had to protect you. If you're reading this, it's already too late," burned into her mind, each syllable a riddle she couldn't solve. The attic's dim light flickered, casting long shadows across the metal filing cabinet. Her chest ached with a mix of betrayal and curiosity, but she pushed herself to her feet. Whatever Thomas had meant, the answers were here, in these folders, in this house that now felt like a stranger's. She pulled out the folder labeled Eleanor's Future and rifled through it, finding more cryptic notes, bank statements for accounts she'd never heard of, and a photocopy of a deed to a property in a town called Willow Creek, 3 hours away. The deed was in her name, dated 5 years ago, but she'd never signed it, never even heard of Willow Creek. Her breath hitched. Had Thomas forged her signature? Or was this some kind of gift he'd never told her about? The questions piled up, each heavier than the last, but she couldn't stop now. She grabbed another folder, this one labeled R-Correspondence. Inside were emails printed on cheap paper, addressed to someone named Richard. The tone was curt, almost desperate. "You promised it would be clean. Don't drag her into this." Another read, "The money's moved." She can't know. Her stomach twisted. Who was Richard? And what couldn't she know? Eleanor's life with Thomas flashed before her, 25 years of small arguments and quiet joys, of scraping by and dreaming of better days. He'd always been secretive about his work, locking himself in his study for hours, but she'd chalked it up to his artistic temperament. Now she wondered if she'd ever truly known him. The bank account's depletion, his sudden disappearance, these hidden folders, it all pointed to a double life. But why? And why leave her with nothing but a trail of clues? The next morning, Eleanor woke with a pounding headache and a resolve that surprised even herself. She couldn't afford to wallow. The mortgage was due in 2 weeks, and her part-time job at the local library barely covered groceries. Lily had offered to come home from college, but Eleanor refused. She wouldn't burden her children with this mess. Instead, she decided to follow the only lead she had, Willow Creek. She packed a small bag, tucked the deed and notebook into her purse, and drove her aging sedan out of town, the radio off, the silence filled only with her racing thoughts. Willow Creek was a sleepy town nestled in a valley, its main street lined with quaint shops and a single diner. The address on the deed led her to a small, run-down cottage on the outskirts, its paint peeling, its windows boarded up. The key was under a flower pot, just as the note in the folder had instructed. Inside, the air was stale, the furniture covered in dust sheets. But in the living room, she found a safe embedded in the wall, its combination written on a scrap of paper in Thomas's handwriting. 12-25-00, their wedding anniversary. Her hands shook as she turned the dial, and the safe clicked open. Inside was a stack of cash, more money than she'd ever seen in one place, at least $50,000, and a letter. "Ellie," it began, "if you're here, you're closer to the truth. I never meant to hurt you. The money is yours, but it comes with a cost. Don't trust anyone, especially Richard." Her heart pounded. The money could save her, pay the bills, keep the house, but the warning chilled her. Who was Richard, and what had Thomas done to leave her in such danger? Over the next week, Eleanor's life became a blur of survival and investigation. She deposited the cash in small amounts to avoid suspicion, using it to cover the mortgage and buy time. But the questions kept her awake at night. She scoured the folders from the attic, piecing together fragments of Thomas's secret life. The emails to Richard mentioned a project and investors, but nothing concrete. She called the bank listed on the offshore statements, but they refused to give her information without Thomas's authorization. She even tracked down one of his old colleagues, a nervous man named Carl, who claimed Thomas had been working on something big, but wouldn't say more. "He said it was for you, Eleanor," Carl muttered before hanging up. "For your future." Her struggles weren't just financial or investigative. The emotional toll was crushing. Friends stopped calling, unable to navigate the awkwardness of her abandonment. Lily's daily calls grew shorter, her daughter's voice strained with frustration at Eleanor's vague answers. Michael, always distant, sent a single text. "Mom, you need to move on." But how could she? Thomas's absence was a wound that refused to heal, and every clue she uncovered ripped it open wider. She felt like she was chasing a ghost, one who'd left her to drown in his secrets. One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table, the phone rang. An unknown number. She answered, her voice hesitant. "Eleanor Grayson?" A man's voice said, low and unfamiliar. "You don't know me, but I know you. Thomas left something for you, something bigger than you realize. Meet me at the diner in Willow Creek tomorrow, 7 p.m. Come alone." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Her pulse raced. Was this Richard or someone else? The note's warning echoed in her mind. Don't trust anyone. But she was tired of being afraid, tired of living in the dark. She grabbed her coat, her resolve hardening. Whatever Thomas had left behind, she would face it. She had no choice. The drive to Willow Creek the next day was tense, the sky heavy with clouds. The diner was nearly empty when she arrived, save for a man in a dark jacket sitting in a corner booth. He looked up as she approached, his eyes sharp, his smile thin. "Eleanor," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "I'm Richard. We need to talk about your husband." Her blood ran cold, but she sat, her hands clenched in her lap. The truth was close, and she wouldn't back down now, no matter the cost. Eleanor's eyes locked onto Richard's across the diner booth, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of doubts. He was in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair, and a face etched with lines that spoke of hard decisions and sleepless nights. His suit was rumpled, as if he'd driven straight through a storm to meet her, and his hands fidgeted with a napkin, shredding it into tiny pieces. "You look just like he described," Richard said, his voice gravelly, laced with an accent she couldn't place. "Maybe Eastern European. Thomas always said you had fire in your eyes. He was right." She leaned forward, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "What do you know about my husband? Where is he? And why should I trust you when he explicitly warned me not to?" Richard's smile faded, replaced by a weary sigh. He glanced around the diner, ensuring no one was listening, then pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. Because I'm the one who helped him disappear. And if you don't listen, you'll end up like him, running, hiding, or worse. The folder contained documents that made Eleanor's head spin. Blueprints for architectural designs she'd never seen, financial ledgers showing millions moving through shell companies, and photos of Thomas meeting with shadowy figures in foreign cities. Richard explained in hushed tones that Thomas hadn't been a simple freelance architect. For the past decade, he'd been involved in a high-stakes venture, designing secure facilities for wealthy clients, some legitimate, others skirting the edges of legality. Richard was his partner, a former engineer turned investor, and together they'd stumbled upon something bigger, a network of corrupt officials siphoning funds from government contracts. Thomas had uncovered evidence of embezzlement, bribes, and worse, ties to organized crime. When he threatened to expose it, the threats started. "He left to protect you," Richard said. "They were closing in. He faked his disappearance, drained the account to fund his escape, and left clues for you to follow. The cottage in Willow Creek, the safe, that was his insurance policy." Eleanor's mind reeled. The man she'd shared a bed with, argued over dinner with, had been living a lie. "Why not tell me? We were married for 25 years. Her voice cracked, the betrayal cutting deep. Richard's eyes softened. "He loved you too much. He knew if you were involved, they'd come after you, the kids. He planned to contact you once it was safe, but things went wrong. He's gone underground, deeper than I can reach." The complexity of their relationship hit her like a wave. Thomas hadn't abandoned her out of selfishness. He'd sacrificed everything for her safety. But the secrecy, the lies, it eroded the foundation of their marriage in retrospect, turning cherished memories into illusions. As the conversation deepened, Richard revealed more layers. Thomas had confided in him about their marital struggles, the financial strains that led to arguments, Eleanor's unfulfilled dreams of traveling the world, the growing distance as the kids left home. He regretted not being honest, Richard admitted, but fear changes people. It makes them build walls. Eleanor felt a pang of guilt. She'd noticed his late nights, his distracted demeanor, but attributed it to midlife crisis or work stress. Had she been too complacent, too trusting? The diner blurred around her as emotions swirled. Anger at Thomas for his deception, sorrow for the life they'd lost, and a budding resentment toward Richard for being the confidant she'd never been. Driving back home that night, Eleanor's thoughts turned to her children. Lily, at 22, was studying art in New York, her calls filled with youthful optimism that now felt naive. Michael, 24, worked in tech in San Francisco, his pragmatic advice masking a fear of emotional intimacy. How could she tell them their father wasn't just gone, but entangled in danger? The next day, she called Lily first. "Mom, what's going on? You sound different." Eleanor hesitated, then poured out fragments of the truth, the clues, the meeting with Richard, the hidden money. Lily's response was a mix of shock and accusation. "Dad left us? For some secret life? How could you not know?" The call ended in tears, Lily's voice trembling with betrayal. "I thought we were a family. Now it feels like a lie." Michael's reaction was colder, more analytical. "Mom, this sounds like a scam. Don't trust this Richard guy. Dad probably ran off with someone else, and now you're chasing ghosts." His words stung, highlighting the fractures in their family bonds. Michael had always been closer to Thomas, sharing his logical mind, while Lily inherited Eleanor's emotional depth. The revelation widened those gaps. Michael withdrew further, canceling a planned visit, while Lily insisted on coming home, her protectiveness clashing with Eleanor's need for independence. "I can handle this," Eleanor said. But Lily's arrival 2 days later brought tension. They pored over the documents together, Lily's artistic eye spotting patterns in the blueprints that Eleanor missed, hidden symbols, perhaps codes. But arguments erupted. Lily blamed Thomas for everything, while Eleanor defended him, revealing her lingering love. "He did it for us," she'd shout. But doubt crept in. Was it love or cowardice? Complicating matters further was Richard's persistent involvement. He called daily, offering more details and warnings. The people Thomas crossed, they're powerful. If they find out you're digging, his concerns seemed genuine, but Eleanor sensed undercurrents. During one meeting at the cottage, he confessed his own stakes. He'd invested everything in their venture, and Thomas's disappearance left him exposed. "I need your help to access the offshore accounts." Thomas locked them with codes only you would know. Anniversaries, kids' birthdays. Eleanor's trust wavered. Was Richard an ally or manipulator? Their interactions grew charged, a mix of shared grief and unspoken attraction. He reminded her of Thomas in his intensity, but without the walls. One evening, over coffee, he touched her hand. "You're stronger than he knew." She pulled away, guilt flooding her. Betraying Thomas, even in thought, felt like another layer of complexity in her unraveling life. As weeks passed, Eleanor's struggles intensified. The money from the safe dwindled on investigations, hiring a low-cost PI to trace Thomas's last movements, traveling to meet old contacts. Her job at the library suffered. She called in sick too often, her mind elsewhere. Neighbors gossiped more openly now, some offering sympathy, others judgment. "Poor Eleanor, midlife abandonment," they'd whisper. Internally, she battled self-doubt. Had her complacency driven Thomas to secrecy? The emotional weight pressed on her relationships, straining bonds with friends who couldn't understand her obsession. One, her closest confidant, Sarah, urged therapy. "You're losing yourself in this." But Eleanor pushed back, isolating herself further. The deepest conflict emerged in her heart. She loved Thomas still, but the revelations painted him as a stranger. Dreams haunted her, him returning, explaining everything, only to vanish again. Waking, she'd clutched the wedding ring she still wore, torn between removing it and clinging to hope. Lily's presence helped and hindered. They bonded over shared pain but clashed over next steps. "We should go public, expose this," Lily argued. "No," Eleanor countered. "It's too dangerous." Michael's distance hurt most. His rare emails were curt, accusing her of dragging them into drama. "Let Dad go, Mom. We have our own lives." In the midst of this turmoil, a new clue surfaced. Sorting through the attic folders again, Eleanor found a USB drive hidden in a photo frame. Plugging it in, she discovered encrypted files, videos of Thomas speaking directly to the camera. "Ellie, if you're watching this, I'm sorry for the pain. But know this, the key to everything is in our first home, under the floorboards. It's not just money, it's proof. Use it wisely." Her breath caught. Their first home, a tiny apartment in the city, now rented out. The journey there would deepen the conflicts, pulling her family closer to danger and forcing confrontations she'd avoided. Richard offered to accompany her, but she refused, sensing his motives weren't pure. As she prepared to go alone, the complexities of trust, love, and betrayal weighed heavy. Each relationship a thread in a tangled web she had to untangle to find peace. Eleanor's sedan rumbled down the highway toward the city, the USB drive tucked into her purse like a ticking bomb. The revelation of Thomas's video had ignited a spark of hope and dread, a volatile mix that kept her awake through the night. His words, "The key to everything is in our first home, under the floorboards," echoed in her mind, each syllable pulling her toward the tiny apartment where their marriage had begun. It was a place of laughter and struggle, where they danced to old records and argued over paint colors, where Lily and Michael had taken their first steps. Now it held secrets that could unravel the mystery of Thomas's disappearance, or destroy what little she had left. The city skyline loomed as she approached, its glass towers a stark contrast to Willow Creek's sleepy charm. The apartment was in a modest brick building, now leased to a young couple who'd agreed to let her visit under the pretense of checking for maintenance issues. Eleanor's hands shook as she knocked, her story about a sentimental visit feeling flimsy. The tenants, a friendly pair named Mia and Sam, welcomed her in, oblivious to the weight of her mission. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paint, but traces of her past lingered. The creaky floorboard in the hallway, the window overlooking the park where she'd pushed Lily's stroller. "We'll give you some space," Mia said, sensing Eleanor's unease, and they stepped out for coffee. Alone, Eleanor knelt by the living room floor, her fingers tracing the familiar oak boards. Thomas's video had been specific. Under the third board from the window, left side, she pried it up with a screwdriver from her bag, the wood groaning as it gave way. Beneath was a metal box, rusted but intact, secured with a combination lock. Her heart pounded as she entered their wedding date, December 25th, 2000. The lock clicked, and inside she found a hard drive, a stack of documents, and a letter in Thomas's handwriting. Her breath hitched as she opened it. "Ellie, if you found this, you're braver than I ever was." The drive holds evidence, names, transactions, proof of their crimes. But it's dangerous. If they know you have it, they'll come for you. "I love you. Forgive me." Tears blurred her vision, but she shoved the letter into her purse and plugged the hard drive into her laptop, her fingers trembling as files loaded. There were spreadsheets detailing millions in laundered money, emails between Thomas and unnamed contacts, and photos of men in suits meeting in shadowy rooms. One name appeared repeatedly: Viktor Morozov, a name tied to offshore accounts and cryptic warnings. But the final file stopped her cold. A video dated 6 months ago. Thomas's face appeared, gaunt and unshaven, his eyes darting nervously. "Ellie, if I don't make it, know I tried to fix this. Morozov's people are everywhere. The designs I made, they're not just buildings. They're vaults, hiding their secrets. The one in Willow Creek holds the key. You'll know what to do." The video cut off abruptly, leaving her frozen. Vaults? The cottage in Willow Creek wasn't just a hideout. It was part of a scheme. Before she could process it, her phone buzzed. Richard. "Eleanor, where are you? We need to talk. It's urgent." His voice was tight, almost panicked. She hesitated, Thomas's warning, "Don't trust anyone," ringing in her ears. "I'm busy," she said curtly, hanging up. But seconds later, a text arrived. "You're in danger. Meet me at the cottage." Now her pulse raced. Had he been watching her? Or was he genuinely trying to help? She grabbed the hard drive and documents, her mind spinning with questions. The tenants would be back soon, and she couldn't risk being seen. She slipped out, the weight of the box's contents pressing against her chest. Driving to Willow Creek, Eleanor's thoughts churned. The evidence pointed to a conspiracy far bigger than she'd imagined. Thomas had been a whistleblower, or something close to it, entangled with dangerous people. But why hadn't he gone to the authorities? Why leave her to piece it together? The cottage loomed ahead, its peeling paint ominous in the dusk. Richard's car was already there, and he stood outside, his face pale. "You found it, didn't you?" he said as she approached. "The drive?" She froze, her hand tightening on her purse. "How did you know?" His eyes darkened. "Because I helped him hide it. But you don't understand. Morozov's people are closing in. They know you're digging. The air shifted, heavy with suspicion. Before she could respond, headlights flashed in the distance, and a black SUV sped toward the cottage. Richard grabbed her arm, pulling her inside. "They're here," he hissed, locking the door. Her heart hammered as she clutched the hard drive. "Who's they?" she demanded, but Richard was already moving, pulling up a rug to reveal a trap door. "The vault Thomas mentioned, it's below. Get in now." Panic surged, but she followed, descending a narrow ladder into a concrete chamber. The space was small, lined with metal cabinets and a computer terminal. Richard sealed the trap door above, his breath ragged. "This is where he stored the originals," he said. "Blueprints, contracts, everything to bring Morozov down." But then came the twist that shattered her world. Richard turned, his expression no longer protective but cold, calculating. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," he said, pulling a gun from his jacket. "Thomas trusted me, and so did you. But Morozov pays better." Her blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. Richard wasn't Thomas's ally. He was a double agent, playing both sides. The meetings, the warnings, his feigned concern. It was all a ruse to get the evidence. "You led them to me," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage and fear. He nodded, almost regretful. "I didn't want it to come to this. Hand over the drive, and maybe you walk away." The sound of boots above broke the silence. Morozov's men, searching the cottage. Eleanor's mind raced, her eyes darting to the cabinets, the terminal, anything she could use. She'd trusted Richard, led him into her grief, and now he'd betrayed her, just as Thomas's secrecy had. But she wasn't helpless. Years of managing a family, surviving loss, and chasing truths had forged a strength she hadn't fully recognized. "You won't get away with this," she said, stalling, her hand inching toward a wrench on a nearby shelf. Richard's gun wavered, his eyes conflicted. "Don't make this harder, Eleanor." Above, a crash signaled the men breaking in. Time was running out. She lunged, swinging the wrench at Richard's hand. The gun clattered to the floor, and she dove for it, her heart pounding as shouts echoed above. Richard tackled her, but she kicked free, grabbing the drive and sprinting for the ladder. The trap door burst open, and masked men descended, their guns gleaming. Eleanor's breath caught. She was trapped, the evidence in her hand, her life hanging by a thread. But as she faced the men, a new resolve surged. Thomas had left her this fight, and she wouldn't go down without one. Eleanor's back pressed against the cold concrete wall of the underground vault. The hard drive clutched in her sweating palm like a lifeline. The masked men descended the ladder, their boots thudding with menacing finality, guns trained on her. Richard lay groaning on the floor, the wrench she'd swung at him leaving a gash on his forehead. But his betrayal still burned in her chest, a fresh wound atop the layers of hurt Thomas had left behind. Time seemed to slow, her mind flashing through the chaos of the past months. The empty closet, the cryptic notes, the money in the safe, the shattered trust in her marriage. But in that moment, fear gave way to a fierce clarity. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the life Thomas had tried to protect, for her children, for the truth that could set her free. One of the men barked an order in a thick accent, Russian perhaps, tying back to Morozov's name, and advanced, his hand outstretched for the drive. "Give it up, lady." No one has to get hurt. But Eleanor saw the lie in his eyes, the cold calculation. She glanced at the computer terminal behind her, Thomas's words from the video echoing. "You'll know what to do." The terminal was still powered on, a login screen glowing faintly. Her fingers flew across the keys, entering their anniversary date as the password. It worked. A menu popped up. Upload evidence? Y/N. Thomas had prepared this, a fail-safe to send the files to authorities, journalists, anyone who could expose the corruption. As she hit Y, the men lunged. Eleanor dodged, kicking at the nearest one's knee, the adrenaline surging through her veins like fire. The vault erupted into chaos. Grunts, shouts, the clatter of metal as she grabbed a loose pipe from the floor and swung wildly. Richard stirred, his eyes widening as he realized the tide was turning. "Stop her!" he yelled, but it was too late. The upload bar filled rapidly, files streaming out to predefined recipients, FBI contacts, major news outlets, even an anonymous whistleblower site. A siren wailed from the terminal, Thomas's alarm system alerting local police. The emotional rise hit Eleanor like a wave, tears streaming down her face as she fought. This wasn't just survival, it was reclamation. For years, she'd played the supportive wife, the steady mother, bearing her own dreams under the weight of family obligations. Thomas's secrets had stripped her bare, but in uncovering them, she discovered her own strength, a resilience forged in quiet struggles, now blazing bright. One man grabbed her arm, twisting it painfully, but she stomped on his foot, breaking free and scrambling up the ladder. Gunshots rang out, bullets ricocheting off the walls, but she burst through the trap door into the cottage, slamming it shut and bolting it with a heavy chain. Outside, sirens grew louder, real ones, not just the terminals. The police were coming, drawn by the automated alert Thomas had rigged. Eleanor dashed to her car, the hard drive still in hand as a backup, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and triumph. The SUV's doors flew open, more men spilling out, but she revved the engine and peeled away, gravel flying. In the rearview mirror, she saw Richard emerging from the cottage, shouting orders, his face a mask of fury. But as she sped down the rural road, blue lights flashed ahead, police cruisers blocking the path. The chase ended abruptly, Morozov's men skidding to a halt, trapped. Eleanor pulled over, her body shaking as officers approached. "Ma'am, are you okay?" one asked, his voice kind amid the chaos. She handed over the drive, her voice steady despite the tears. "My husband, he left evidence. Corruption, embezzlement. They're after me." The officer's eyes widened as he radioed for backup. Within minutes, the men were in cuffs, Richard among them, his betrayal laid bare. As he was led away, he met her gaze, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "You were supposed to be easy," he muttered. "Thomas underestimated you." She straightened, the emotional high lifting her. "So did you." In the days that followed, the resolution began to unfold, each step pulling Eleanor from the abyss toward light. The evidence went viral, news outlets blasting headlines about a massive corruption ring exposed by an architect's widow. Morozov, a shadowy oligarch with ties to international crime, was arrested in Europe, his empire crumbling. The FBI confirmed Thomas's role. He'd been coerced into designing secure vaults for their operations, but turned the tables, embedding digital backdoors to gather proof. His disappearance wasn't abandonment. It was a desperate bid to draw danger away from his family. But the search for him continued. Agents believed he was alive, in hiding, perhaps in witness protection. Eleanor's emotional rise deepened with her family's reconciliation. Lily arrived first, bursting into the hospital where Eleanor was treated for bruises and shock. "Mom, I saw the news. You're a hero." They embraced, tears flowing as Lily apologized for her doubts. "I was scared, angry at Dad. But you fought for us." Michael flew in next, his stoic facade cracking as he hugged her tightly. "I was wrong, Mom. I should have been there." For the first time in years, the three sat together, sharing stories of Thomas, not the flawed man who'd lied, but the loving father who'd sacrificed everything. The complexities in their relationships healed slowly, conversations turning from blame to understanding. He loved us imperfectly, Eleanor said, but deeply. Michael nodded, vowing to stay closer. Lily promised to help rebuild. Financially, the tide turned dramatically. The government seized Morozov's assets, and as the whistleblower's widow, Eleanor received a substantial reward. Millions from frozen accounts tied to Thomas's designs. The cottage in Willow Creek wasn't just a hideout. It concealed a vault of valuables Morozov had stored, now forfeited to her as compensation. She became a millionaire overnight, the money a bittersweet vindication. But it wasn't just wealth, it was freedom. She paid off the house, funded Lily's art school, and set up a trust for Michael. For herself, she dreamed bigger, traveling, perhaps starting a foundation for women facing betrayal and loss. Emotionally, the rise was profound. Eleanor removed her wedding ring one quiet evening, not in anger, but acceptance. Thomas's absence still ached, but it no longer defined her. Therapy sessions helped unpack the grief, turning pain into purpose. Friends rallied, Sarah organizing a community gathering where Eleanor shared her story, inspiring others. "I was 50, alone, broken," she told them, her voice strong. "But secrets don't destroy us, they reveal us." Applause echoed, and in that moment she felt alive, empowered. Yet the direction toward full resolution hinged on one hope: finding Thomas. Agents updated her weekly, traces leading to South America. "He's out there," one said, "and he knows you're safe." The emotional peak came in a letter delivered anonymously. "Ellie, you did it. I'm proud. Stay strong." Thomas's handwriting. Tears fell, but they were cathartic, washing away the last doubts. She was rising, not just surviving, but thriving. A woman reborn from the ashes of deception. Eleanor's life, once a tapestry of quiet despair and hidden shadows, now bloomed into a vibrant mosaic of renewal and purpose. Months after the chaotic night in the Willow Creek vault, the dust of the scandal had settled, leaving behind a world forever changed. For her, her family, and even society at large. The evidence Thomas had meticulously gathered, amplified by her courageous upload, had toppled not just Viktor Morozov, but an entire network of corruption that spanned continents. Headlines faded, but the impact lingered. Stricter regulations on government contracts, whistleblower protection strengthened, and a wave of investigations that exposed similar schemes worldwide. Eleanor, the unassuming 50-year-old librarian turned unlikely hero, became a symbol of resilience, her story inspiring countless others to confront their own hidden truths. The financial windfall was the most tangible transformation. The millions from the seized assets and rewards poured in, managed wisely by financial advisors she hired to ensure longevity. The old house on Maple Street, once a prison of memories, was renovated into a warm haven, its attic cleared of secrets and filled instead with art from Lily's burgeoning career. Eleanor invested in herself first, traveling to places she'd only dreamed of during her marriage. She stood on the cliffs of Santorini, the Aegean Sea stretching endlessly below, feeling the wind carry away the remnants of her pain. In Paris, she wandered the Louvre, tears mingling with awe as she realized this freedom was hers, earned through fire. But wealth alone wasn't the happy ending. It was the catalyst for deeper joy. Her family, fractured by Thomas's secrets, knit back together stronger than before. Lily moved back temporarily, turning the spare room into a studio where they painted side by side, Eleanor's tentative strokes evolving into bold expressions of her inner world. "Mom, you're glowing," Lily said one evening as they sipped wine on the porch. "Dad's mess gave us this. You, unbreakable." Michael, too, bridged the distance, relocating his tech job closer to home. Family dinners became ritual, laughter echoing where silence once reigned. They spoke of Thomas openly now, not as a villain or victim, but as a complex man whose love, though flawed, had shaped them. He'd be proud, Michael admitted during a hike, his arm around Eleanor's shoulders. Of all of us. And then, the miracle that sealed her emotional ascent. Thomas returned. It happened on a crisp autumn day, a knock at the door revealing a man aged by hardship, his eyes the same warm brown she'd fallen for decades ago. Protected by the FBI until the threat subsided, he'd watched from afar as Eleanor dismantled the empire that had ensnared him. "Ellie," he whispered, stepping inside, "I never stopped loving you." The reunion wasn't fairy tale perfect. There were tears, accusations, nights of raw conversation unpacking years of deceit. "Why didn't you trust me?" she asked, her voice breaking. He held her hands, his own trembling. "I was afraid of losing you, but I did anyway, until you saved us both." Forgiveness came slowly, a bridge built brick by brick, but it came. They remarried in a small ceremony, surrounded by Lily, Michael, and friends, vowing honesty above all. Thomas, retired from architecture, joined her in new ventures, their bond deeper for the trials. Eleanor's wealth became a tool for good, inspiring society in ways that rippled outward. She founded the Grayson Foundation, dedicated to empowering women over 50 facing life upheavals, whether abandonment, financial ruin, or hidden betrayals. Programs offered legal aid, financial literacy workshops, and emotional support groups, drawing participants from across the globe. "Age isn't an end, it's a beginning," she told audiences at TED-like talks, her story captivating rooms filled with nodding heads and teary eyes. One woman, a 60-year-old nurse whose husband had left her destitute, approached after a seminar. "You gave me hope. I started my own business because of you." Eleanor's message was universal. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. In a world quick to discard the middle age, she proved that reinvention knows no timeline, that secrets, when confronted, can unlock unimaginable strength. The foundation's impact grew, partnering with international organizations to advocate for transparency in corporate and government dealings. Eleanor testified before Congress, her voice steady as she shared how one man's hidden life exposed systemic flaws. "We all have secrets," she said, "but when they harm others, silence is complicity. Let's build a society where truth is the foundation, where vulnerability is strength." Applause thundered and policies shifted, enhanced protections for whistleblowers, mandatory disclosures in high-stakes contracts. Schools incorporated her story into curricula on ethics and resilience, teaching young minds that struggles forge heroes. Online, forums buzzed with hashtag Eleanor Effect, women sharing their triumphs over adversity, creating a global network of support. Personally, Eleanor's days filled with simple joys that money couldn't buy but freedom allowed. She volunteered at the library, reading to children and mentoring aspiring writers, passing on the love of stories that had sustained her. Evenings with Thomas were tender, walks hand in hand under starlit skies, rediscovering the spark that had ignited their youth. "I became a millionaire," she confided to him one night, "but the real riches are here, with you, the kids, this life we've rebuilt." He smiled, pulling her close. "You were always rich in spirit, Ellie. I just helped you claim it." As years passed, Eleanor's legacy endured, a beacon for society. Her book, Secrets Unveiled, A Journey from Loss to Legacy, became a bestseller, its pages filled with raw emotion and practical wisdom. Readers wrote letters, a young widow who found the courage to start over, a man grappling with his own deceptions who chose honesty instead. The universal inspiration lay in her message. Life's twists, though shocking, can lead to profound growth. Struggle isn't defeat, it's the forge of character, and happy endings aren't handed. They're earned through perseverance and heart. In quiet moments, Eleanor reflected on her path, from the rainy night of abandonment to this sunlit reality. She was 50 when it began, but age had become irrelevant, proof that transformation awaits at any stage. Society, inspired by her, began to value the wisdom of experience, fostering cultures where older voices led change. Her story whispered to all, face the unknown with courage, for on the other side lies not just survival, but a life abundant.